welcome to the Dean Blundell Show podcast. My name is Dean, and we are podcasting live from Toronto, and a very special podcast today because we're just outside the cities, I believe outside the cityscape of Baltimore with my friend, Mr. Jason La Canfora from the NFL on CBS, 105.7 The Fan. He's the afternoon show host there as well in Baltimore, a show called Inside Access. He also has a million other things going on. So I just wanted to touch the important ones. Jay, how are you? It's been forever.
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Yeah, we are in my attic right now in Baltimore County, Towson, Maryland. So we're just over the city-county border. But yeah, we're now probably 8 miles away from Camden Yards and M&T Bank Stadium. For those who might have come down here for a game. So yeah, man, we're humming along. 2020, it is what it is, brother.
I like that. It is what it is because I follow you on Twitter. You and I have followed each other on Twitter for quite some time. Obviously, we did some radio together, which is where we knew each other. And my favorite La Canfora memory is the time that Ubaldo Jimenez served up a meatball instead of Zach Britton. Do you remember that? Meatball down the middle. That. And the bet was on the line that you had to change your Avi on Twitter at Jason La Canfora on Twitter to a Blue Jays Avi. And you did for a month. You did not welch on the bet. And I never got a chance because I got gassed after that. I never got a chance to say, way to go, dude. Like that took nuts. I was shocked that you kept it up there for a month. I really, really was.
Yeah, that's I got a lot of trouble on Twitter that night. Yeah, but it gave me good fodder for my podcast for a while, which I no longer do because now I've got the afternoon thing going on. But I still can't believe that Buck Showalter found a way not to use a guy who had basically a Cy Young season in his role in favor of a horrible starter who hadn't pitched out of the pen all year and who had no success against whatever. We could do a whole podcast on that game, but
yeah, it seems like you
team was going anywhere. Yeah. But they could have gone down with their best guy, like go down swinging. Yeah. Don't go down with a Baldo out of the pen.
Yeah, that was one of the greatest missteps in the history of wild card games. It was, and still, it's like Buck Showalter, all the good shit that he did. That's his calling card now. Ubaldo Jimenez, as opposed to Zach Britton, who was lights out all year long. All year long, he was perfect. Anyway, I don't want to rub it in, but.
No, I mean, they also couldn't. I mean, they couldn't buy a hit. There was a lot in that game. Mm-hmm. I mean, other than Trumbo homer, I don't know. They didn't have many productive at bats, but yeah, I mean, it unfortunately because Buck's tenure was transformational, really. Here,
yeah,
that's in the first paragraph. It's not the lead, but it's you're talking top moments of memorable things that happened.
Yeah.
During his tenure, that's up there for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I love Buck and he was great. And it was time for them to change. And I really like the direction they've gone in, both in the front office and, and with the skipper. And I love Buck and he'll always be revered here. Mm-hmm. But that was the beginning of the end.
Yeah, it was. It was a good one. And for the average fan that doesn't know much and to know who Zach Britton was, it was like one of the darkest moments in Baltimore Orioles history. But I was excited to talk to you today because your Orioles did my Blue Jays a massive fucking favor yesterday, all weekend long. They take 3 of 4 from the Yankees. They look terrific. I know that they got almost swept at the hands of the Blue Jays in Buffalo a couple weeks before that. But you split with the Mets before that. You're in a playoff position. Mr. Dean Kramer came out yesterday and tossed an unbelievable game, his playoff debut. It's fucking nice to see the Baltimore Orioles in the conversation, and it's even nicer to see the New York Yankees lose something like 20 of their last 26 games.
Well, really, the biggest gift the Orioles gave you guys was you had just gotten whacked by, I think it was Tampa.
Yeah.
Teoscar can't catch a ball in right field. Bichette goes on the IL, and you come limping into Camden Yards, and then you sweep us. Yeah. We're throwing the ball all over the place. We got guys getting out at home plate with nobody out in the first inning. I mean, yeah, Tanner Roark, they had him on the ropes 3 batters into the game, managed not to score any runs. Santander doesn't take the extra base the second when Cisco tries to score from from third on a routine grounder to shallow infield. Okay, so I don't need to rehash all that. But really, I think that's where it turned around, right? Because I can remember talking to some of the Blue Jays guys we had on our show, and they're like, nobody's hitting. Like, everybody's worried about the first baseman's weight, and is his swing the same because he's carrying more weight? And, Teoscar's the only guy hitting the ball, but we can't play him in the outfield, and we got too many DHs as it is. And, what are we going to do without Bichette? And you guys have been their season's completely turned around. Yeah. And then, the series in Buffalo was a bunch of close games again, where some stupid fielding decisions. Alberto had a couple errors. Valleca, I think, had a couple errors. We were forced to play him at short because Iglesias was hurt. So, you guys should definitely you owe us some crab cakes and beers out there, or whatever. But it's been fun. I mean, this season is weird. It is. I mean, I don't even really know what to make of it. It's like I call it like a Frankenstein season, where you're patching all this stuff together and then trying to see if it can actually, can it walk? Can it hold its head upright for 60 games? But no, it's been great. Everything's felt competitive, and the games still kind of sort of matter. I mean, do I think they're going to get in the playoffs? No, but if the Yankees keep losing guys, if they keep having injuries, but look at Detroit. I think Detroit's only 2 under, and they were back at 500, and they had a rough series over the weekend. So there's a lot of cool stories. I mean, even the Marlins and they're still relevant, and what they've been through with the COVID and everything. Mm-hmm. It's been wild. But the Blue Jays look like they're ascending. I mean, what they did at the deadline versus what New York did, that may pay some dividends. And I guess I saw Pearson's throwing off a mound now. I saw him pitch in the minors a couple of times. I think he's going to be special. And maybe so do we. Pen, I would put him in the pen and let him be a 1-inning high leverage guy. Not that you have, your pen's been great, but I don't know that I would throw him back in a starting situation at this point. But if you get anything out of him, that's like another trade deadline acquisition.
Yeah. There's a couple of guys that are on the list too that have struggled or coming out of the gate. Vlad would be like the one glaring wart, and I've been hard on Vlad over the past little while. And you were nice when you said your first baseman looked like he was carrying a little extra weight. Dude was so out of shape, and you could see it. You could see it when he was playing. You could see it in his eyes. You could see it in his belt. He didn't look any different than Pablo Sandoval remember when his belt tapped out a few years ago when he was in town. And it's not that I have a problem with bigger baseball players. I don't give a shit. I loved Cecil Fielder Sr. Yeah. I've got no problem with guys as long as you do the job, but he's not doing the job. So you point to the fact that there's got to be an issue with his weight, right? Because he's trying to learn a new position. He sucks at first base. It's just a gimme. He wasn't great at third either. His defense wasn't outstanding. Right. But, I watched Rowdy Tellez in this last series eat Boston alive. And I watched Vlad Jr. guess, and it was this guessing game. And if it's funny because the way that Rowdy Tellez has played, specifically in the last month to month and a half, maybe even the last 2-3 weeks, you have to wonder if Vlad was doing what Rowdy was doing. No one's talking about Rowdy. Right. People are still talking about why Vlad isn't Vlad. Why hasn't he become this fucking thing? Why hasn't he turned into the greatest power hitter in the history of the Blue Jays organization in the first 2 years of him being here? And I think there's a legitimate question for a lot of people because Biggio's better than him. Teoscar's better than him. I mean, he doesn't carry anything. I don't know what his WAR is, but it can't be great. Right. He's a threat at the plate every time he gets up there, but not so much anymore. Like everything was legend before he got here. Now it's put into practice. I have a hunch Vlad Jr. is not going to be the Vlad Jr. everybody said the Vlad Jr. was going to be.
Yeah. I mean, the bar was kind of set so high. I mean, it was out of control. We went up, so when all those guys were in New Hampshire, that was like 2 years ago when they were all in AA in the Eastern League. The Orioles stunk, and so usually I would take my kids to see the Orioles play in different stadiums, but they were just so bad. I was like, well, let's go up to New Hampshire. We actually did it around Father's Day, and I took my oldest, Rocco. Our little guy was still he was like 5 at the time. It was just a bit much. And we have some friends up in New Hampshire. So it's like, we follow the minors a lot, and we watch them play a little bit on the MILB app, but we missed them when they were in Bowie. So I'm like, let's go up there. And so Vlad was like that. He was hitting like 415 or whatever, you know what I mean? And it was July, the legend of that team. And it's Biggio and Bichette. And it was just so, I mean, I think at that point, people were like, you could call Vlad up right now, make him your cleanup hitter. You know what I mean? And he's going to hit 360 with 35 dongs in the majors right now, but service time. So anyway, he slid into second base and got hurt the game before that series started. So he wasn't even there. They sent him back to Dunedin, and he ended up being shut down for like 6 or 8 weeks. And then I think maybe they brought him up to Buffalo a little bit at the end of that year.
It was 2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. We were up there for a series with Bowie. And actually the first game, Keegan Aiken, who just won his major league debut against the Yankees, pitched against those guys and held them in check. But it was like, if you were a baseball fan, like if you were really into it, I just kind of felt bad for Vladdy, because I'm like, I don't know how he's going to succeed. Like, unless he's his dad at this point, because of what he's done in single A or double A, people are going to be like, oh, well, that's great, but it's not all that. And then at the same time, you see what Tatis has done, and, Acuna and all the Soto, and it's just a crazy, this ain't always how it is, there isn't always a whole bunch of 21 to 23-year-olds destroying the league, but they are right now. And I think that kind of plays into the thing for Vladdy as well. I mean, he's got a long time to figure stuff out, but I just remember thinking, A, is he going to be star-crossed? And B, what will success be for this? You know what I mean?
Yeah. How do you define success for a kid who's not just expected to be a Major League Baseball player? He's not just expected to be an impact player in Major League Baseball at the age of 19. He was expected to be the greatest hitter in the history of this organization when they fucking signed him at 16.
Right. Like, from the moment he's called up, he's one of the best hitters in Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
Might not. It's, this is an inexact science. Like, there's a reason that these, teams fail by and large trying to project, in baseball and hockey, 15, 16-year-olds, and football, 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds. There's a lot that goes into it. So I think he'll be a productive player, and maybe he will be transformational. But we did see a lot of Biggio and Bichette, and the guy I was most impressed with Bichette, because I'm I think this kid's going to stay at short. I mean, he can hit. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it'll be fun when he comes back, but it's just cool. I don't want the Blue Jays to win, but it is cool when you watch some of these kids on the way up, and then you see them, get to the next level and then really bring it.
Yeah, listen, I don't want the Baltimore Orioles to win either, so I don't take it personally. You can say that loud and proud. You don't have to hide it in a sentence like, don't worry, I don't want them to win, but I want to ask about the pandemic. Specifically, not just about baseball, because listen, as long as we're getting baseball, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Hockey seems to be doing a good job in the bubble.
Yes.
You write, produce, you do everything for the NFL on CBS, an insider for the NFL on CBS. That is your gig. That is your job. You were one of the best in the world at it, if not the best. Now you are. Just admit it. Just take it. It's where you live. It's who you are.
To say, but
you are.
I appreciate it.
What are the chances we're seeing basketball? No tests, no positive tests. Football's a very fucking different animal. I know that they're trying to engineer some face masks. I don't know exactly the precautions they're taking, because we just know that they're trying to get the game going in the next week or so. And some teams will have fans. Is this going to end well? Is this a mistake? Do they have a fucking choice in the matter?
Well, I have to say, what they've done to this point, I no matter, you could be the biggest skeptic in the world, the numbers are almost unfathomable how low they are. And the number of confirmed positive cases are a small handful, and it hasn't spread. And you've had 185 people in these buildings for 6 weeks now, 5 days a week. And it's been handled better than anyone could have ever hoped for. Now they haven't played games yet, but I mean, they have been practicing 2.5, 2 hours. So it's not like guys haven't been rubbing up on each other. And it's not like they haven't been involved in football activities. They have now. For again, these buildings have been open for like 6-7 weeks now. And incredibly, it hasn't been an issue. Now, when you start traveling in large numbers and you're exposed to some different things, not that these guys are going to be leaving the hotel rooms anyway, but
no, of course not.
Lockdown.
Well,
they're not supposed to be. I mean, some may. I mean, again, we'll see. Even in normal times, their whereabouts were pretty restricted.
Hey Jay, now, I just want to remind you that Lou Williams only went for wings.
Yeah. No, look, will everybody make the best decision possible all the time?
No.
I mean, it's human nature. But I think there's incredible peer pressure in these locker rooms that, hey, we've got this far by doing this. Mm-hmm. We can't pretend we're, just because we're now in Kansas City instead of here, that it's not the same thing. It's this mentality has to travel. We have to be in this and committed and not afraid to tell on each other. Like, you see a guy doing something stupid, say something to the coach, say something to him, say something to NFL security. So we'll see. I predicting anything in this era, I think, is just kind of stupid and ludicrous because from day to day, we just don't know, especially when it comes to how COVID's been handled in this country without a national response. So when they start integrating in different communities, could it be a problem? I mean, it may, but I can do nothing but applaud the efforts of the union, the league, the players, the coaches to even get it to this point where they're starting week 1 with almost a blank slate, almost complete health. There was a lot of people who just weren't given the way the numbers have gone in a lot of these communities where they are playing the games, given how bad things were getting in Phoenix, how bad things were getting in Houston, how bad things were getting in Florida. For these buildings that aren't in a bubble to have basically maintained bubble-like numbers is amazing. So, I always thought that the league would start, that there would be enough infrastructure and they would get it off the ground. Would the nature of COVID in this country allow it to continue to float for 4 months? And we'll see. But I this whole thing from a timing standpoint has worked in their favor just because of when it hit and then we're not playing a game that matters for 6 months. Mm-hmm. And I think the thing that happened I won't even say I know that when the situation happened with the Marlins, where the moment they stopped testing constantly and guys started traveling, the whole thing looked like it would start unraveling. And now it's the Cardinals too. At that point, talking to some people at the league office, it was clear that they were going to have to keep testing every day all the way through. And we had Dr. Alan Sills, the chief medical officer of the league, on our show about a month ago. And that's the thing I most asked about. I'm like, you're telling me that you can handle that test load, not just through training camp, but 180 people in these buildings times 32 buildings times 6 months. You can keep turning around testing that quickly. Yes, you have the financial wherewithal to go to that length from the owners and from the commissioner if need be. Yes. And at that point, I'm like, well, guess what? You're probably going to have to, brother, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right. And so, I mean, and then you saw them announce they had the deal through September 5th. And then he came out and said, yes, we're going to continue to test daily, for the foreseeable future. I think that to me was always going to be a baseline because it's not like baseball and you can play doubleheaders and make games up, on off days. Like you have a team lose 3 or 4 football games, your whole schedule's asunder, So I think that I would be shocked if at some point this year they go to testing every 2 or 3 days. I just don't think that's going to, with the volume of people they have and the way this thing spreads, I just don't think that's going to be possible.
No, and I don't think it's the right thing to do. Testing specifically in your country, and we'll get to that in just a second. But testing in your country has to happen more often than it happens anywhere else, just simply due to the caseload. The United States, everybody knows, is what is it, a quarter of all cases in the world or in the United States. And so, if it's a different scenario here in Canada where we're doing the bubbles, I know players are getting tested every day here in the United States. Sorry, here in Canada, and Toronto and Edmonton, where they're doing the NHL bubbles. But it's like I said, you're talking about 5 times the amount of people in a traveling party, right?
Yeah.
And so then that would bring up in my head, because I'm a capitalist, but I'm also a little socialist. I love the idea that people can go out and achieve, but I also think we have a responsibility to take care of the less fortunate.
Yes.
So NFL is going to do this kind of shit. NHL is doing this kind of stuff. NBA is taking tests away from people who need it. Is that an issue? Like, should we be talking about that? Not you, because it's your job, but should we be talking about the fact that, hey, listen, there are a lot of people out there in positions where they can't get a test. And I saw a guy the other day who makes $2,100 a month. He works for Pizza, and he drives an Uber, and he lives in Minneapolis, and he had a test done, and he got a bill from the hospital for $10,194 yesterday. And I thought to myself, it's going to be an interesting conversation with La Canfora, because it is egregious just to be able to put a sport on.
Well, it's certainly something that is talked about, that we've talked about on my show, that people have asked of these leagues. And now they would say that they've also invested hundreds of millions of dollars into making testing available for other people, and that they're working, at least in the NFL's case, with specific labs that they have contracted with that wouldn't be doing, you know what I mean? They wouldn't be doing mainstream testing from some person who went into, the health, whatever, medic alert down the street to get a test. They would have been doing it for some other private industry, not, wide scale turning around of public tests. And thankfully we now, apparently, from what I read, at least, are getting basically on the cusp of having more of these point of care quick turnover tests readily available around the country. Now, will it be in every community with a country of this size and the magnitude of this thing? I don't know. But yeah, it's something that these leagues have to grapple with. And are they getting preferential treatment, and at the expense of what is a part of the calculus?
Well, it's optically, it just looks bad, but if you can afford better treatment, you go and get better treatment in general, right? Like I don't not believe in that as well. But the United States is a very different mixed bag because there's so fucking much of it. And I would wonder, someone like you who, I know a little bit about your politics, completely agree with your politics, and the situation that you guys find yourself in as Americans, seemingly on the right side of the conversation. It's a great picture in your Abby on Twitter of you and Joe Biden. I don't know who the other guy is, but I know it's you and Joe Biden.
Yeah, that was only he takes the train all the time, and I had heard stories for years about people who work on Amtrak, because he lives in Delaware and he's constantly commuting to Washington, about him just being this totally normal guy and like the coolest dude ever, and always in a good mood, always has time for everybody. So I'm like, eventually I'm going to end up on a train with Biden. Like, it's inevitable. And I did last year, coming back from doing the NFL Today. And actually the guy who took the picture was my buddy, James Brown, the host of the NFL Today.
Oh, you're kidding.
Can you take a picture? Yeah. So if you could have flipped the camera around like the other way, like to take the selfie, it would have been JB taking the picture. And I'm sitting there in my Misfits t-shirt, like a couple of red wines in. Finally, their aides are like, yeah, just go down. Like, I'm like, is he going to get off at Wilmington? They're like, yeah, like 10 minutes before Wilmington, just go down there. He's great. He'll just ask him for a picture. And
what was he like?
Look, I mean, I'm not like a huge, like, I wasn't like stumping for Joe Biden. Like I mean, was, I think it reached a point in this country where if you were of a certain mindset, you needed to get wholeheartedly and full-throatedly behind whoever was going to be representing the Democratic Party when it gets down to nuts and bolts time. Mm-hmm. So it's not like was like rah-rah Biden, or like he was the guy I would have voted for in a primary if we were in normal times. But we're not.
But you're not.
No.
But
yeah, so we'll see. I mean, November 3rd will be undoubtedly, I think, probably. I was born April 14th, 1974. I think November 3rd, 2020 will be the most important day of my lifetime.
Why?
That's election day.
I know, but why in your lifetime? I know it's election day, but and I'm trying to figure out from someone like you who I respect. And again, I respect your vision. I respect your politics, and I respect your social minded attitude towards all the right things. But for someone living in Canada, how bad is it down there that you don't even give a shit who the Democratic candidate is? It just happens to be a good dude who likes to go to church. His name's Joe Biden. But how bad is it right now down in the United States over the past 4 years to go from where you were in America 4 years ago to where you are today, other than your passports and totally useless? How bad is it in the United States right now? I know it's a big question.
It's scary. I mean, there's a lot of norms, a lot of things that you would take for granted, or I think I speak for a lot of people, we came to take for granted that have been challenged in a way that I never really fathomed. Freedoms of speech, stupid light. Freedoms of the press. I mean, it's well chronicled. We've got, the way, I mean, immigration, race relations, and it's, I just hope we can get as a country to a place where, just sort of the discourse that you would expect from leadership, what it means to be a leader, what it means to be presidential.
Do you guys not like talking about him?
I just think we could use a role model, as a country.
But do you guys hesitate talking about him? It's like Voldemort. I know some people in media down there that are like, fuck.
No, yeah, I mean, I think I think it's pretty clear to see where I come from. I think it's pretty obvious what I believe in and sort of where my allegiances lie. So no, it's just, I also don't want to allow that to take up too much of my headspace. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to kind of breathe life. I don't want to, part of me is also like, there's a thing of, do you want to keep giving that stuff oxygen, or do you finally reach a point where you're just like, all right, it's go time. I'm going to express what I believe. I'm not going to keep mentioning that name, or what I don't like about that. I'm going to try to champion what I do believe in and what I do like. And now we're down to less than 60 days. So we're going to find out, what this country's all about in less than 2 months. And you know what I mean? And it is what it is. And now there's a whole other argument to be had about the Electoral College and whether that makes any sense and how these processes work and why a country of, 300 odd million people has two parties, like there's two ways of thought. Really? I mean, the whole system, that's a whole nother ball of wax. But where we are right now, it's almost like I just want to hit fast forward, you know what I mean, to November the 3rd and just see what the results are and how they look versus 4 years ago.
Are you more, listen, I know a lot of very proud Americans that are still proud Americans, proud of their country, maybe not proud of the cat in the White House, but are you more embarrassed to be American today than you were 4 years ago?
Yeah. There is a lot that has happened in the last 4 years that has come out of the highest office categorically don't believe in at all. That runs completely counter to everything I believe in as a human being. Now, one person doesn't a country make, but if you flip the script, if you look at it from how a Canadian would be looking at this, how, a Dutch person would be looking at this, how a German would be looking at this. I I get it. I mean, the response from other countries hasn't surprised me in the least. So yeah, I just am at a point now where it's just like
it's exhausting.
Well, this cycle's almost over. You know what I mean? So it's like, do I want to keep breathing energy into this cycle, or do I want to just focus on, what we're about to find out? And is this a blip, in a historical blip, or is this a trend? And if it's a blip, then, you know what I mean? Let's just get to the future and put it behind us. If it's not, that's a whole nother conversation to be had. I'm hopeful that it's a blip.
Mm-hmm. I do too.
I'm not trying to in any way lessen its impact or pretend it didn't happen. But there were a lot of circumstances that went into us getting here in the first place. Mm-hmm. Have we learned from them collectively as a country? Have enough people change their mind, or enough people feel more motivated to vote who've been sitting on the sidelines, whatever. I don't know. And even the polling, I don't even like to look at that too much because,
because of what happened in 2016.
Really know the science behind it. Yeah. And how many people are inclined to lie to a pollster, tell somebody on the phone or tell somebody outside of a polling place what they did. That might not be what they represent their actual vote. So I just am now like,
done.
We're 300 days into this thing, and we're less than 60 from finding out where America is. I just keep trying to think about
the positive, the eventual change.
Well, we're almost to the finish line.
Yeah.
Is it a finish line or another starting line? We're going to find out.
That's a great point. That's a great point, Jay. And you know what? You have the ability to, to take the issue, because I asked a blanket question. You had the ability to say, hang on, is this one thing? Is this a moment in time, or is this where we're heading as Americans? Because that I don't like, and that part's relatable for people, no matter what country you're in. I can watch it from the outside, and you said you understand how this looks from a Canadian's perspective in the United States. And it's odd because at first everybody was angry. Fuck, it was a great story. Every time he was on television, he was doing something completely ridiculous and saying something way out of hand. So the content, and I'm just here for the content, Jay, I really am. So the content was fabulous. Like every single time he opened his mouth, something that came out of it was dumber. Something that came out of it was more untruthful than the last time that came. So from that side of it, I've enjoyed it. But now it's to the point where, he is the biggest story in the world. The election is the most interesting conversation to have on the globe because of the direction that it could go, the emboldened direction that administration could take after getting another mandate for 4 more years. So that's the part that scares me. But at the same time, we don't have, like, media, state-sponsored media. You have it. You have it. You have it in OAN. You've got it in Fox News to a lesser extent, but we don't have that here. Like we've got news that's news, and here's your news, and it's very impartial. And leaders they sewer each other, but Canadians are very weird about it. We'll sewer someone and then apologize for it later.
Oh, sure. Well, there's a degree of decorum.
Yes, there is. But it's not like that in the United States. It's not like that, and the part that bothers me is I grew up thinking the United States was, I did, in Canada, Western Canada, the United States is a place to be.
Yeah.
Living in California would be so awesome. Oh my God, I want to take a trip around, and I've been to so many different ballparks because I loved America. Yeah. I went to Comerica Park, the opening of it. I got a brick. I've been to Boston. I've been to 15 different ballparks in the United States. As a Canadian, because I loved the ideal of America. I did. As a Canadian, you look at it now and you go, okay, well, listen, I'm not spending any vacation money down there because it's scary as fuck to go there. I've got friends that are trapped from their perspective, trapped because, the truth. Fair-minded, like-minded people know the truth, but it's being not muddied, it's being destroyed and turned into something else on a daily basis. And that's really where you start fixing problems. It doesn't matter who you are. Where you start fixing problems is, okay, there's a basis for this problem because the basis is the truth, and we can start there, right? So you learn how to fix a problem based on the foundation of the truth. But that's disappeared over the past 4 years. And That's the part that scares people to the north, maybe some
Sure.
people to the south, except for my man Vicente Fox, the former president of Mexico. Could be the greatest wheel of all time.
Yeah. He's an entertaining follow.
Isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I totally get it. We again think, like, I'll just go back to things that we took for granted. America as this unifying superpower, which unifying for who, at what time, blah, blah, blah. I'm not trying to say that I necessarily buy into everything that connotes, but the idea of looking to America in a time of need, I can understand why people are looking the other way. I get it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Jason La Canfora, the NFL on CBS Sports, NFL Insider. Silly if I don't ask you a couple more questions. When my friends found out you were going to be on the podcast, they sent me about 5,000 fantasy football questions.
Oh boy.
I pared it down to like 4 or 5. Can you do a couple quick ones before we get to?
I'll try. I mean, I'll just say this. I don't like win my fantasy football like leagues, and I'm only in one religiously or anything like that. So I'm not, don't necessarily take these to the bank, but I will do my best.
Dude, they're taking them to the bank. Okay. NFL season questions in fantasy. We'll start with 6 from the NFL season. Can the Chiefs run it back? Can they go again? Yes or no?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think they had the best offseason of anybody in football. When you look at securing 12 years of Patrick Mahomes services and 6 years of Andy Reid's and keeping Chris Jones, and now a whole season with Steve Spagnuolo as the coordinator there, and having that baseline, and everybody else, a lot of the league, brand new coach or a new quarterback or a new middle linebacker who's got to learn a new system. No, I think they hit the ground running.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers, boom or bust. Can you buy a championship in the NFL?
I mean, look, they weren't that far off last year. And is Tom Brady going to put up the gross passing yards that Jameis Winston did? No. Is he going to have to? No. Will he be much better in the red zone? Yeah. And I don't think Jameis is a closed book either. Like, I think Jameis could still have a bright future ahead of him, but that team was still playing meaningful games in December with a guy who threw 40 interceptions or whatever. I mean,
he got his eyes fixed this year too, I found out.
Yeah, he did. He had LASIK surgery. Yeah. We had him on the show. He was great, actually.
Is he a good dude?
He's look, I don't condone everything he's done in his life, and he has made decisions that I think are poor. And that he would say are poor at this point. But I just think we're so quick to write off 25 and 26-year-olds. Mm-hmm. So no, I think Jameis with a year in New Orleans will do him a lot of good and getting a reset and watching a lot of football. And I think Jameis can be a winning quarterback in this league for sure. But I just think, yes, Tampa, the defense was already ascending. It's the most talented group that quarterback's had around him in a long time. And Bruce Arians is not going to get in Tom Brady's way. And Tom Brady, while everybody else was Zooming, Tom Brady was basically conducting mandatory Bucs practices. I mean, they weren't mandatory by the CBA, but do you want to get the ball thrown to you this year? Like, do you want to snap the ball to me and be the starting center, or do you want
come to practice?
Yeah. Like, do you want to, do you have incentives in your contract? Yeah. Do you have an incentive for 40 catches, 50 catches? Okay. Yeah, this is where we're going to be. You should be there. That's Tom, man. He's completely driven to win in an insane way. And that's a tough division. I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk for them, but I think, if you've given me a list of 6 to 8 teams that I think could win a Super Bowl, I'd put them on it.
Who's going to have a better season, Cam Newton or Tom Brady?
I think Tom will win more games. Not that the Patriots are I don't think the Patriots are falling off a cliff. I think the Patriots could still win 9 or 10 games and get in the postseason. Tom's got the better roster around him. That's why he left. And they obviously play the game so differently. But I think they each will have I could see Tom Brady playing in a Super Bowl, and I could see Cam Newton being the comeback player of the year and lifting a team without great talent into the playoffs. So
Good answer.
I think it'll work out well for both of them. I think the people who find ways to hate on Cam or sleep on Cam are going to, by November, are going to be running out of darts to throw at him.
Are the Jags shitting the bed for Trevor Lawrence?
I mean, the Jags are doing what the Dolphins did and what the Browns did. They are shedding themselves of high-priced assets and acquiring as many draft picks as possible in the hopes of rebuilding quicker rather than, sooner rather than later. So, yeah, do they want, if they finish poorly, which I don't know how they're not going to. And I think Minshew can play in the league, and I think he'll be okay. But
he's the most exciting player off the field that I've ever seen.
He's a great dude, and I really felt like and I'm on the record, you can read anything I wrote at the time. Yeah. I thought it was ridiculous bringing Nick Fulton, benching that kid for Nick. He goes to London. You basically tell him if you play well, you're keeping the job.
Right.
You have a weird week over there. He has the one that, he plays a game where, yes, he had happy feet. He looked overmatched in that game. And then you go back to the other dude. I didn't like the whole setup in the first place. I for where they were as a franchise, I'm like, you should be rolling with this Minshew to find out what you got. And they're doing that now, and I think he could do the job. I think, especially given how bad I think they're going to be, I think he could do all right. But then you still find yourself where the Bengals were, which is we like Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton's won some big games. Andy Dalton's a good quarterback, but this guy might be transformational. This guy might be generational. Mm-hmm. And that's how I think it'll probably end up playing out for the Jags. No, I'm not sure they're going to get the first pick. I mean, I think the Washington football team is going to have their problems, and the Giants don't look very good on paper to me right now. The Jets, there's going to be bad football teams. That's the reality. Mm-hmm. And well, if Jacksonville was in a position to take a quarterback who they think could be a guy who's like a 4 or 5 wins over replacement type quarterback, I don't think they'll be shedding any tears over that.
Yeah, I agree. And I love Gardner Minshew. One of the things that I love about him, and it's not just, he reminds me of Baker Mayfield, only if Baker Mayfield was born in the 60s.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, he's got a little Baker Mayfield to him. Fantasy with Jason La Canfora. 5 players you need to have on your fantasy team. We'll burn through these.
Oh, is that the question, or you're asking?
Yeah, I just go real fast. 5 players you need to have on your fantasy team with Jason La Canfora.
Well, I was only in one draft. I'll just some guys who I am high on, mm-hmm. Who maybe I took before other people would. I think Hayden Hurst will be a top 10-ish fantasy tight end with Matt Ryan, and playing on that fast turf and being sort of the number one option. And as much as Ryan throws the tight ends, I think Hayden Hurst will outproduce what Austin Hooper did, and Austin Hooper ended up getting $11 million a year mm-hmm. from Cleveland. I think Kyler Murray is going to explode.
Really?
Yeah, I do. I think Kyler Murray is primed to have a monster season. And I like Jonnu Smith, the tight end with the Titans. I don't know that at the end of the day, I still don't think they're going to have as much volume in their pass game as most teams, just because of what they do and Derrick Henry and what, sort of who they are. But I think he's somebody who's probably being drafted lower than the production would dictate. I keep hearing,
right.
Rookie. Yeah, Baltimore.
It's Baltimore.
Rookie receivers, I know, can be hit or miss, but
yeah,
the Steelers do this as well as anybody when it comes to identifying impact wide receivers. And I just, everything I've heard about this Claypool kid, I think Ben really trusts him. I don't think they're worried that he's a rookie. I think he's going to, I think he'll make an impact. And again, you could probably get him late round. Might be a little bit of a learning curve early just because of the lack of preseason, but he's somebody I like. And right here in Baltimore, Dobbins, I don't know how they're going to divide what the divisional labor is going to be. And I don't think they know. It'll be game by game and matchup by matchup and what's working and who's best at what. But if, Ingram's a little bit up there, and Ingram got banged up last year, I still think Ingram's the guy in the red zone. And when they're near the goal line, he's just got such a nose for that stuff. And he can catch balls himself. But everything I keep hearing, like you just talk to guys randomly or text guys about like who's standing out. Everybody's like Dobbins. So, and he's someone who I think because you've got Ingram there and you've got Gus Edwards and, they still have the kid Hill they drafted a year ago, you might look at that and say, wow, it's really crowded. But if he's standing out now, I think he'll have an opportunity. And then again, you also have to look at, if Ingram goes down, who's the bell cow? I mean, some weeks it might be Gus Edwards, but I've just heard enough buzz about Dobbins to where I believe it.
Yeah, and you're there. And you're there, right? Like it's one thing to hear something about somebody, but like, you talk to these guys every day, you would know. And I would wonder if, from an insider's perspective, because my opinion is everybody's an insider except for you. You're the NFL insider. In hockey, we don't really have any anymore because everybody knows shit. It's like a bad rumor you hear at church. That's how Canada is with hockey rumors. But is it difficult is it harder now to get information about guys in the age that we live in where you're not broadcasting, you're not going down to these teams, the pandemic has you out of the building?
I mean, well, you'd say a lot of it is just access. And, normally July and August, I would be going from camp to camp in a rental car. And like sometimes there'd be a camera crew there and I'd have to do like 8 stand-ups. And so you'd kind of be pushed for time. But a lot of times you're making sure that I'm at this team on this day because the coach's schedule is a little light, so I can go have beers or dinner with the coordinator or the special teams coordinator or whatever. Like, and a lot of times you're at a camp and there aren't cameras there, and you just have a notepad in your back pocket, and you might not. I might not ever take it out. I might just be having a lot of sort of conversations on background, or and guys just kind of shooting the bull. So, yeah. And then everybody's schedule is different because of Zoom and when we're in the building and not in the building. And so, their availability is different. And, I can't just, if I wanted to go to Ravens practice tomorrow, I mean, I could do it, but you're still from afar and you wouldn't be able to talk to anybody until you got home for the Zoom anyway. And they're only doing special teams. Really, if you go to an NFL practice now, they let you watch the first 30 minutes, which is stretching and special teams. So you're not going to make an observation that really provide content.
You're going to do a thing on Lamar Jackson being,
wow, this guy's really limber. So,
you wouldn't believe how far Lamar Jackson can do the splits. It's incredible.
Right. So it kind of, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, we were on there, just about access and sort of what reporting and journalism and sports broadcast are going to look like, even post-COVID, even with the vaccine, given what we've been through, and what's worked and what hasn't. It has. It's different. I mean, the draft, normally you'd get the best draft stuff because there'd be, scouts from different teams standing around at these pro days gossiping, and they, leak a little bit like, hey, what do you guys think of this guy? Because our GM really likes him, but I'm not so sure. There'd be all that going on, which then trickles down to schlubs like me. But that wasn't happening. The teams weren't interacting. The agents, without the pro days, you'd have the agent there, and he'd be like, dude, Green Bay had 6 guys here, you know what I mean, at this workout. And here's the feedback I got from them. And you could start connecting dots. Now, it turns out I think I had a really good beat on the draft and it worked out fine, but it was a different sort of process. And honestly, I don't think I really had a handle on it until, maybe only a few days before, where you're really gathering stuff that I might have found out 3-4 weeks before the draft. I wasn't finding out nearly as much of it until the week of the draft, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And you bring up a great point, and you alluded to it. We talked about it off the top. Do you see access changing from what it is? I got to think.
I see it changing from what it used to be.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I got to think that the owners and general managers in different leagues and different teams are like, fuck, we can control all this messaging and nothing will get out because all we got to do is put Jimmy in front of a screen and then we get the pre-approved questions, which is what they're doing in the NHL. They go to people with a pre-approved question, then boom, they're there for 3-4 minutes. It's over. Like, you're not sitting around talking to, some guy from the Baltimore Herald, or you're not talking to a guy from USA Today when you're in those rooms going, here's what I heard, here's what I did. And that's how you used to put your shit together. So what now?
Yeah. I mean, we would always say the best stories don't come from the building. It's, what you talk to somebody on the phone about later or whatever. But for people getting into this or people who've changed beats, well, the way you got people's phone numbers was you build up trust in the locker room. And then you're like, hey, bro, if the stuff hits the fan and I need you, you know what I mean? I hear something about you or something that affects you.
Yeah, let me know.
I need you or you need me. Can I get your cell phone number? Like guys at the end of the Zoom aren't saying, if you need more stuff, I'm at 615-222-5133. You know what I mean? So it's almost like, how do you get to that point if you're really not being able to have the normal human interactions that we would take for granted as part of being a beat reporter or a national reporter or whatever? It's very different. And I don't know exactly where it's going, but I don't think it'll ever be like it was.
Where you had access, like you could just, you get a little thing, you get a little card, you just walk, they see you coming, they're like, hey, Jay, come on into the Eagles locker room. No problem.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, at some point, I guess there will be like what we would consider a normal Wednesday NFL access with an open locker room or whatever. Mm-hmm. Sorry, my dog is.
I love dogs. Let me see him.
Coppers.
Let me see him. You take more pictures of your pooch and put more pictures of your dog. That's a rescue, isn't it?
Yeah, that's Copper. He's a pug dachshund mix.
Oh, dude. All I see him doing is sleeping on your couch. That's it. Pictures of him sleeping.
Or we go and walk. Oh, I don't want to say that word because I don't think we're going on one. But we'll go on a WALK and he just plops down in somebody's yard and just like he does. I got to carry him home half the time because he just wants to sit out there and look at people and hang out.
Hi, Copper.
Yeah, I forgot where we were. Oh yeah, so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. Do some sports? Yeah. Does there become a even more variance between the sort of what's the normal access to players in say basketball versus football versus baseball? Right. But look, they're all talking amongst each other too. Like I don't know if you guys get Real Sports. HBO does this.
Yeah, we do. Yep.
And they were doing during the pandemic all on Zoom, and they did one with the head of the NFLPA and. D. Smith and Tony Clark and all the union heads. And they were very candid about we're talking to each other constantly as we're trying to get through these protocols and what's working for you, what's not. These commissioners, I would think, are doing the same thing. So, yeah, it'll be very interesting how all the different, Pro Hockey Writers Association and Pro Football Writers Association.
They were so ass kicked over the whole thing here. It was like a public outcry from every hockey journalist across Canada that they weren't allowed in the bubble because there's only NHL reporters in the bubble, right? So it was like this public outcry that no one was allowed to go to the rink, and it's like people forget. Well, we're in the middle of a fucking pandemic. Like it's a special time. Like it's not like no player's going to know. Like you could go to Jimmy's Seafood Shack or whatever it is. Yeah. You could talk to somebody. You could accidentally have someone talk to you and spit on your face by mistake. Then you're going to walk into the Baltimore Ravens dressing room and make half their O-line sick by mistake. Like these are real concerns.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. So right, everybody's had to adapt and do different things, and industries have been forced to get creative or, deal with the consequences financially or otherwise. That's been very real for, pretty much any industry. So, I we'll see where it goes and how quickly things change. Some of these leagues are starting up again soon, right? Ostensibly the NBA might be starting up again in December or November or whatever. They would be under these same media protocols, I would imagine. And then once we get a vaccine and it's proven, maybe the pendulum swings back a little bit, but I'll be fascinated to see how much.
Jason La Canfora, I want to finish off with some sad news, but some motivational news. I was taken aback by the passing of Mo Gaba. Explain, I know who he is, 14-year-old kid. Just an inspiration, the happiness in this kid's eyes, the encouragement he would give players, who he became, who he became to this, not just the teams in Baltimore, the city of Baltimore. Tell me a little bit about Mo Gaba, where you met him, how he started, and how he changed the lives of so many people around him.
Yeah, and the thing is, I personally don't really know Mo that well. I learned of Mo the way a lot of people in this area learned of Mo was from him calling into the station that I now work at, 105.7 The Fan in Baltimore. Mo was a young man who's been battling cancer, really battled his entire life. And I mean, I think it was maybe 15 operations in all at various times. Mo was blind. So he
if I could just, I read about him this morning. He was diagnosed with retinoblastoma at 9 months old. He spent 75% of his life in the hospital. He, as you said, 15, 16 surgeries. That in itself was shocking to me. That in itself, the story behind itself was shocking to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So he would, he didn't have anything close to a normal childhood or even really a childhood, because he was always attached to something or having a procedure or recovering from a procedure or preparing for a procedure or back in the hospital for care. But he loved sports and he radiated joy. And so he would call into the afternoon drive show here in Baltimore quite frequently. And I would be picking my kids up. And sometimes, you'd hear the voice, you could tell he was really young. And he just sounded like the most buoyant, like just a kid. You heard Mo's voice for the first time and you would have thought that this kid was totally on top of the world. Yeah. Like he just radiated goodness, and he's so funny and just really quick-witted and loved sports and loved to talk about sports. So the guys who were doing the show at the time, they started putting them on and they didn't really know anything about it. They just figured, like we all did, wow, he's a really cool young man who really likes sports and watches all these games and knows what's going on and has fun calling into the show. The more he called, they started hearing from some nurses and people with the family and started to know exactly what he was going through. And that, for the guys like Jeremy Kahn and Scott Garceau and some of the other guys at the station who really know him well, like it was incredibly jarring for them because you would have never guessed it. And then to know his spirit through these calls and then to find out that, no, every day is really, really bad for Mo, but Mo doesn't have a bad moment. Like that juxtaposition, it blew everybody's mind. So then it became, and especially for Jeremy Kahn, I mean, he became like a member of the family and would be over at the house all the time playing video games, and we'd have drives to help pay for what's, and I should say the station, and people who knew Mo would have GoFundMes and things to help him and get him what he needs that isn't covered by insurance, and to try to give him whatever level of comfort you could to someone who nothing was ever going to be comfortable. Nothing was. Mm-hmm. Physical comfort, sadly, I don't think he had much of, unless he was, unless he had so many drugs in his system that, you know what I mean? You're almost in a state where you can't really know what's going on. Mm. So that was his existence. And I just would hear the voice and I would say to my kids, like, hey, this, when I didn't even know much about Mo, like, hey, listen to this. This is obviously a young guy like you. And he's pretty cool what he's doing. And wow, he knows what he's talking about. And then when obviously you hear Mo's story, and then every time he would call, it's like a teaching, moment with my kids. Like there's so much I could learn from this kid who at the time, first time I probably heard him was probably 10, 11 years old, that, you try to impart in your kids, like, listen to him. This is what his day was like. And look how he's not sorrowful. He's not, mired in his own stuff. He's trying to be a good person for others.
Yeah.
And then, a few months back, it was, Mo didn't know, but everybody at the station knew that it was terminal, that it was just a matter of time before he passed. And, the organizations, the Orioles, the Ravens had been behind him forever, but, the Orioles made sure they put him in like the team's Hall of Fame, before it ended up happening really within days of him passing. Everybody honored him in different ways. He called in, at the draft, he made one of the selections for the Ravens, and, everybody really stepped up, and for his family, that there was a lot of support for them, emotional, financial. But he's just, the kid is nothing short of inspirational. And he's someone who'll be remembered here forever. There's going to be sections of the Ravens games where the fan cutouts are all going to be Mo Gaba. Like, so instead of getting one, as yourself, it's Mo with his, Lamar jersey on, cheering. The Orioles are going to continue to find ways to honor him. There's a lot of renovations that'll be happening around Camden Yards in the next few years. There's a bit of a movement already now to maybe rename one of the streets around there for Mo. There's been people talking about maybe a statue for Mo. But I wish I knew him better. I just knew him as someone who listened to the station and then got to know his story. And I know a lot of people who were really on the inside and who went above and beyond for this kid. And yeah, he people will be talking about him around here for a long time, and hopefully not just around here.
Yeah, no, listen, it moved me in Toronto, just learning about his story, and you watch people through, their existence go through shitty things, right? Someone's going to have a low moment, someone's going to have a low year, someone might have a low decade, but to watch a young man with no eyesight, no eyes, riddled with cancer, his entire life from the age of 9 months old, laughing and giggling as he's talking to guys about the game and the way he understood the game and not being able to see.
Yeah.
The way he understood football, and he couldn't visualize it because he couldn't see. And that's what struck me, is the joy that he took out of something that he knew so much about, but technically speaking, should have no idea what was going on. And that speaks to how special he is.
He's reading about and gathering as much information as he can and living in some ways vicariously through his heroes. But like Mo, you know what I mean? Mo never walked and was never going to walk. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, and yeah, he just, I mean, the moment you would hear him on the radio, it's just like he's on top of the world. Every single time, he just radiated positivity, and he was so alive. And for someone whose existence was that limited to be so alive and such a part of the community, and so vibrant and outgoing, he was a treasure.
You know what? It made me look inside too. Like, why do I get miserable? What do I have to be upset about? I've got a dog, I've got a family. My body seemingly works. I can pick things up. I can drive. I can see. And you talk about, the pandemic making you take things for granted. I think anytime you go through something like this, or you see someone that has gone through something that is it's unimaginable to me. You get reset a little bit, and you go, you know what, if a kid like that going through what he went through can live like that, live happy, why can't I? So he's a great story. And the way that you guys and everybody at the Fan and your afternoon drive show co-host at Inside Access, the way that you guys held him up as an example, and the way you talked about him, it spread all the way up here, and I want to thank you for it, because it was eye-opening for me.
Well,
it really
I'll
was.
Pass it on. Like, honestly, I was just an admirer of his. I wish I knew him personally. But yeah, the athletes, everybody just gravitated to him for good reason. And he inspired so many people. And yeah, the station and the teams did well by him.
Yeah, they did. Jay, listen, I'll let you go. When do you start your gig on the NFL on CBS? When's your first day? And are you doing it from that attic? And are you wearing the same clothes?
Will not be. This is not going to pass muster with wardrobe, even remote wardrobe. No, I won't. I do the radio show up here in the attic. The TV equipment is in the basement, in the unfinished side of the basement. It has been spruced up, though. We had Verizon and some great operations guys from CBS have it looking a lot better down there. New backdrop, 85-inch monitor. So yeah, I'll be down there for Sundays, at least to start the season, and then we'll see how things go, and what protocols are okay, and where the numbers are in New York City, where our studios are. So I'll be doing it remotely. That other pregame show on CBS Sports Network on Sunday mornings, and then doing some CBS Sports HQ on Sunday mornings. And then the NFL Today gets started on Sunday, week 1. So we'll be on the next 20 or so Sundays from noon to 1 Eastern time, right up to kickoff of the CBS games.
Looking forward to seeing you on television again. Looking forward to have the NFL back on television again. And can't thank you enough for taking some time.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate it.
Having me. I appreciate your support. And it's amazing that we're here with again, the numbers with football being so low and the commitment that it's taken from so many people to get to this point. I think there's lessons we can take from that as a greater society, especially down here as well. So yeah, man, I'm fired up. Can't wait for Thursday night and can't wait for every Sunday with the NFL and CBS.
Good, man. Jay, appreciate it. Take care of your pooch. Don't forget to vote. Don't forget to vote November.
Don't worry about that. It's already been taken care of.
I'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much, Jay. All right, man. Jason La Canfora. Oh, see you. Bye. Bye, Copper. Bye, Copper. There you go. Jason La Canfora for the NFL and CBS. He is our guest here on the Dean Blundell Show podcast. Long time coming. One of those guys that you talk to and you just glean information from, and he's got such a great way about him, and he's got this ability to communicate that not many people do. And that's one of the things that makes him really special. And you know what? He's got a soul. Not many people have a soul anymore. Not many people go, oh, that sucks. That's too bad. How can we help? Not many people have the ability to understand right from wrong. They just want to do. Can't say enough about Jay. At Jason La Canfora on Twitter. Thanks to him for joining us, and thanks to our friends at CBS for allowing that. We appreciate it. Hold on. We've got another podcast coming up in mere moments. Stick around. The Dean Blundell Show podcast continues. Ooh. Yeah.